You're tuning into the podcast with the most beard. Two dudes and a Bible. It starts now. I didn't even do a big intro, and you already think that one's amazing. Hey guys, we are coming alive to you from an undisclosed, secure military installation for this broadcast. So tune in, join us now for Two Dudes and a Bible. I'm your host, Pastor Ren Shuffman. With me is my co-host, Pastor Justin Heckel.
The most beard. Oh.
First thing I could think of. Hey guys, if you're watching, comment, like this post, share it out, like this podcast, share it out as we interact with you live this morning. Yes, I have a different background because I am coming to you from an undisclosed, secure military location. That's 100% true. I am not kidding about that. Why, you ask? It's a good question. You have good questions, guys. So, how are you doing this morning, Justin?
I'm doing great. I'm doing awesome because I just got back from OSI.
Woo! I am deep in the woods right now, and I am drinking out of a Duck Dynasty mug.
You spending 40 days in the wilderness?
Yeah, I said, well, this is fitting. This is fitting. So, yeah, no shameless plug or anything like that. Just want to do that. Thank you for joining us for this great podcast. We have a great time for you. Justin said he's doing great because he just came back from OSI, Oklahoma Supernatural Intensive. It's our big training for the year where we teach you how to walk in the gifts of God, how to prophesy, how to heal the sick, how to see the power of God used in your life and active in your life. It turns out God wants you activated in the gifts of the Spirit. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given them. And so that's our big conference for the year. We do that this year. Normally, it's just one conference a year, but this year, we actually have another one scheduled, not OSI, but SI. So it is still a supernatural intensive, but F standing for Florida. We'll be down in Inglewood, Florida for another one in October. So if you missed July in Oklahoma, and you say, I want to be trained in how to use the gifts of the Spirit, then look into our upcoming FSI in Inglewood, Florida at Pastor Don Hampshire's church. It's going to be amazing. So, Justin, have you had any sleep since last week?
I barely had any last week. I got some last night.
I'm running on coffee and a little bit of country. Coffee and country right now. I came in last night and there was a whole box of military bullets. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be in this room right now. That's true. I would show you guys. Yeah, I was like, I'll show you guys, but I don't think I'm allowed to. So, so I'm in an interesting location right now. All right, so let's talk about what we want to talk about. Last week, I think what we did is, the idea or the hope is of OSI is that we pour new wine into you, pour in something fresh into you, help you to receive the infilling of the Holy Spirit at a different level, right? If you had some wine before, we want to get some new wine in you in order to equip you in the supernatural power of God. If you want some new wine, just type in comment new wine if you want some of that new wine, because I think Justin and I were discussing about what that looks like to carry new wine. It doesn't do much good to have new wine, the power of the Holy Spirit in you, a fresh outpouring into your life, a fresh infilling, a fresh revelation, fresh empowerment of God, more healing, more prophecy, whatever. I'm trying to define that so it doesn't sound so Christianese. But it doesn't do very much good. It's true. I mean, a lot of times we talk in Christianese, and new people are like, these Christians drink a lot.
Well,
is it like,
it's funny that you say that, because on the way back from dropping my boys off this morning, one of the thoughts that I had was, would they consider what you have to say prophetic if you didn't say, hey, I got a word from the Lord? Or, you know what I mean? It's like, would they go, wow, that resonates in my spirit? Or would they say, like, man, that guy said something and then it came to pass? Like, would they decide that you're prophetic without you saying it? So kind of what you're saying there, we speak our Christianese, right? Would people go, man, this guy is speaking from the Lord, if you didn't
you
come
mean
out?
before I say what I hear, I shouldn't disclose and say, well, as a prophet, I hear. I shouldn't say that. Okay. All right. Yeah, I've tried to tell a lot of people not to do that. They don't listen that well
Thus
to
saith
that
the
one.
Lord.
Look, our first comment on the live stream is inviting me to Pakistan. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll actually be in Pakistan in 2 weeks. Actually, a little less than 2 weeks. At the end of this month, I'll be in Pakistan. We have a crusade planned. We'll have over 100,000 people in attendance. So thank you for the invite. Please come to the crusade we'll have. Praise TV with Pastor
Yeah.
Shazad Sadiq. All right. So what does it look like if I'm going to receive something more, if I'm going to receive an empowerment of the Holy Spirit, and I am going to get some new wine, right? That's what we're going to call it. What does it look like to be the kind of vessel that carries that new wine? If I am going to carry something, I need to have a proper container for that.
Yeah.
My wife this morning, my wife is out right now taking like a 10-mile walk. Yeah, that wasn't a typo. She's like a 10-mile walk. And she's like, you want to go with me? No, I don't.
Like, what gave you that idea?
She was super unprepared.
You've only just had your 25th anniversary. Hon, we've only been married for 25 years.
I'm not ready for that kind of commitment. So, it's only 25 years. Let's slow this down. So she was super unprepared. She knew she was going to do this walk, like she was planning it. She knows the route and all that. And she gets up this morning. She's like, I forgot my Bluetooth headphones. I forgot my headphones. I don't have my headphones. And I just talked to her a minute ago, and she's like, yeah, someone's bringing me a hat. I'm like, I literally had 2 hats when you left. I had two different ones. And she's like, yeah, I didn't think about it. And she's like, I need a backpack. I don't have a backpack, so she could take some drinks and stuff with her. And so she took my backpack, and I went into the room where we're staying, and all my backpack stuff is just in a pile, like all of it. And I don't clean out my backpack. So when I say pile, I mean like 6-month-old, like granola bars,
Yes.
like, smashed.
Same.
Yeah. And all those little foil baggy snacks you gave me the last time I was in South Dakota.
Oh, yeah. Those are great.
Yeah. So like just a pile of stuff. And she took my backpack. She was not prepared to carry the water she needed for the journey.
Uh-huh.
She had to steal my backpack, empty out my backpack, and make do because she was not prepared. She was prepared to go, but she wasn't prepared for what she needed to carry. So she had to find a container to carry it in. And so you and I were talking about the wineskin, about receiving new wine and having a proper container to carry it in. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. And let's bring the Bible into this, since we're two dudes in a Bible.
That would probably be helpful.
Yeah. In Luke 5:37-39, it's, and no one puts new wine into old wineskins, for the new wine would burst the wineskins, spilling the wine and ruining the skins. New wine must be stored in new wineskins, but no one who drinks the old wine seems to want the new wine. The old is just fine, they say. So, when we're talking about the wineskins, it was just hitting me yesterday about that. I mean, first off, it's talking about how, like, man, you can't when you put wine into a container, when they put that into a container, it's still in the fermentation process, right? You probably know more about this than I do. You've probably studied this more than I have.
I was going to say, why do you think I know more about making wine than you? Like, why?
Because you tend to study some of these things more than I do.
I tend to study these things. You probably know about the wine, Ren. What's in your cup? Is it coffee?
You're like, it was water when I put it in there. Like, but no. But,
yeah, the other day, someone caught me drinking a glass of wine, and they're like, Pastor Ren, I didn't know you drank wine. And I was like, oh, Jesus, you did it again. I can say that because I don't actually drink. So anybody, don't give me a hard time. I don't actually drink. So
yeah, no, but the thing is that it's still in the fermentation process. So when they put that into wine skins, if it was an old wine skin, that old wine skin had already become hardened and had no flexibility to it. So it would burst the wine skin. I mean, again, Jesus even compares it to a patch being sewn onto a patch of cloth being sewn onto a garment, and that you don't use a new piece of cloth to sew onto a garment, because otherwise, when you go to wash it and things like that, and then it dries out, it's going to shrink and it's going to pull away from the garment, and it's going to make the hole even worse than it was before. And so, but anyways, so bursting the wineskin, because the wineskin is hard. And let's be honest, we probably all know somebody that is so religious. We are like, they are an old wineskin, man. They can't contain. And listen, if you can't think of anybody, chances are someone's thinking of you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. but the thing is that they're so hard and so set in what they think is right, and what they, that they're not teachable. They can't learn new things. They don't want to. They have no desire for it. And they have no desire to expand. They have no room for expansion, And so anyways, yesterday, I don't even know why it came on my radar, but because I think I was just driving. And then all of a sudden, I just started thinking about the wineskin. And I was like, we always say we want new wine, but you need a new wineskin. And I hear people talk about that. But I was like, but no one ever talks about what it takes to make a new wineskin, And so I started thinking about that. Well, shoot, man, it's a lot of great things are made from violent acts. Can I just say that? Like, beautiful music is made through a lot of violent acts. If you want to make a guitar, you have to cut down a tree. You have to cut that tree into pieces, right? I mean, like, you're having to do all these things. If you're making a drum, you have to pound metal into certain. So all these things are like very
a traditional
hard.
Drum would be a tree, and it would also be an animal skin.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you want to play drums, you have to kill animals.
And then
so you can beat their skin.
Yes. And that's the thing, is on top of that, in order to actually make the music, you have to strike something, pound something. Like, you're always doing something that's honestly kind of aggressive in order to make something beautiful.
Fair point.
But the thing is, even with the wineskin, I was sitting there going, man, you're killing an animal, you're cutting its skin. And then you and I started talking more about what the process even looks like. Like, you brought up that they scrape the skin, because you have to scrape it until everything is off of it, right? Like,
you have to scrape all of the fat off the skin. You have to get as much of the flesh and fat off of the skin in order for it to be proper wineskin to hold wine, because all of that flesh and debris will end up in the wine. Right. So you can't have anything that will leak into the wine, like flesh, flesh, fat, etc. And so the fat has to come off, the flesh has to come off, so that all that left is perfect skin. I'll take you through the process a little bit of what that actually looks like.
Yeah, go
Um,
take us into
yeah.
it.
So like there's several things that you need in order to do that, but you have to completely clean that skin. Like I just said, you have to cut off the head, the tail, the muscles, the tissue, the fat, all of that has to come off. Then you need to soak the skin in water for several hours to soften it and remove any saltiness or bitter. You want to soak it. You're going to rub salt on it. There's a whole salt process it goes on there. Once the skin is soft, so it's been soaked for several hours in water, once the skin is soft, you gently stretch it out and remove any creases or wrinkles. And then you dry the skin on a rack. And that takes usually 2 to 3 days, depending on the size of it. And then you're going to actually go again and soak it, mix together like equal parts salt and water. And then you're going to soak it for another day or two in salt water. So regular water, salt water, and then you're going to clean it again. Sometimes you can sprinkle lime on it. And then you're going to make the incisions and stuff to sew it through, right? Obviously, you're going to shape it so that you can sew it and stitch it up. And then sometimes on the fur side of it, like they'll use a goat skin. And on the fur side, they'll actually add pitch to the outside over the fur to waterproof it and make sure it stays good. And so like there's so much symbolism into how we become vessels for the Lord in that process, right? It's starting with the idea that, it's like, oh, I'm just soaking in the Lord. What are you doing? Oh, I'm just spending time with me and Jesus and we're just soaking. And it's like, yeah, but that's great. That's great that you're soaking. I'm really glad you're soaking and you need to soak, right? Because there's a process of soaking, but have you gone through the scraping yet? See, there's a lot of believers, I think, that they're willing to soak, but they're not willing to be scraped.
Dude, that's good.
They're not willing to have the fat removed. They want to add Jesus to their life. They want them plus Jesus, their plan plus Jesus, right? They want to add soaking to their life, but they don't want to subtract anything from their life. And so there is no scraping process that they go through. And what ends up happening is they want that new wine, and that new wine becomes mixture because it has your flesh and your fat in it. It has your excess in it. So you're pouring out Holy Spirit. I met lots of people who prophesy out of their flesh,
100%.
who prophesy out of their greed, right? Balaam was a prophet who didn't scrape the fat off his wineskin. And he prophesied for greed. He prophesied out of the fat of his life. He wanted payment for his prophecies. The Bible says Balaam never missed a prophetic word. He was 100%. Yet he was called a false prophet because of his motivation.
Can you
right?
imagine?
So people are like, you're a false prophet. If Balaam's a prophet, let's just analyze that for a second. If Balaam is a false prophet and he got 100% right, then how does that make a false prophet somebody who's gotten it wrong? By that standard, if somebody gets it wrong is a false prophet, then why is Balaam called a false prophet? It doesn't make any sense.
No.
You would have to call him a true prophet unless correctness is not necessarily the standard. Correctness is implied. We want correctness, but it's not the standard. The standard of prophecy is the intent and the heart and the motivation behind it. And so we want rightness because it comes through righteousness. But Balaam had fat on him. And there was excess. There are some people who prophesy out of wounds, out of hurt, out of pain, because they haven't scraped all the flesh off. They're still them, the wounds of their life still present. They're still bleeding. Wow, and so when that new wine is heavenly wine, but it's filtered, it has mixture in it. And so we're unable to really prophesy from a pure place. There's debris in the Holy Spirit coming out of us. The Holy Spirit's pure, but we're leaking into what's coming out of us. So as we pour out, a little bit of us is always pouring out with it. A little bit of our interpretation is pouring. And that's why I say it's so dangerous when you prophesy to prophesy with your own interpretation. I teach people not to prophesy by interpretation, but prophesy what you see,
Yeah.
prophesy what you hear, and then attempt an interpretation. Sometimes when you interpret, you get a little bit of your own flesh in it. I was just reading a word I released in 2020 about George Washington that I thought was for that election season, that I interpreted as for that. The word is clear. Hindsight 2020, when you look, 2020, because I lived 20 in 2020. There's something more profound to that. That's funny, but it's also profound. Hindsight. That's gonna have me all day. If you have insight, type it in the comments. So I released that word about George Washington. God gave me a very profound word, and I thought it was for that election cycle. But it turns out, looking now, it appears that it's for this election cycle. It appears that my understanding of what that word was for, what purpose it was serving, was not yet come to pass, and it feels like it's more now. Now, why you want the wine and not just what you carry? Because the animal's got its own blood in it. Why you got to turn it into something else sack? It's already a sack of water and blood, right?
Right.
What we do is we take an animal that skin is already a container.
Yeah.
It's already a container. It's containing the blood, the water, all of that of the animal. And so we chop it into another thing. We mold it into another thing, and then we pour something else into it. Isn't that what God does to us?
Come on, man. That's so good.
We surrender to us. He crucifies our flesh and remolds us into wineskins.
And hold on, my wife just typed in, "Love you both." So I have to take this moment and say, "Love you too, honey. You're our pepper." Because she dressed up like a pepper and went on.
I can't say, Ellie, you're a spicy pepper. I can't say that. You guys will see the video soon. She dressed up like a pepper outside of a pepper store at an outlet mall, just cause.
Just because.
Right. We did a little video that said if she can dress up like a pepper and dance around a mall, you can tell someone Jesus loves them. So that's the message.
So back to, isn't that what God does to us? We're already containers of similar things, right? Or of this, the same thing in a lot of ways, right? But it's just not consumable, right?
Yeah, keep going.
It's not consumable. What's wild about that is, it's not fit for human consumption. So if we're going to say that, in a lot of ways, Cindy, live from Man Camp, she gives it away.
Cindy, I said I'm from an undisclosed location right now.
But isn't that interesting that you'd say that it's not fit for human consumption until you take out what's in it and replace it with what we replace it with. And then it's fit for, same thing. It's like, man, really what we have is not fit for human consumption. Really what's fit for human consumption is letting the Lord pour into us and pouring out purely what the Lord gives us. Anyways, now people are hopping on and derailing us.
Now they're trying to derail us right now. Cindy's trying to out my secure location. Look, okay, I just with the given climate right now, I need to keep myself undisclosed. Yes, I'm at the location that Man Camp is at. If you want to have an amazing weekend, join me and Justin at Man Camp. Okay, we're gonna have some pretty phenomenal stuff. Just side note, quick interruption. We're gonna have like this year we're gonna do glow in the dark skeet shooting. Like no joke, we did skeet shooting last year, and we're like, how can we make this more epic and slightly more dangerous? We're like glow in the dark nighttime skeet shooting, like the best. And so we have all this stuff planned that I can't disclose at the moment because Cindy's husband Patrick may be watching. So, right, better to say sorry than not be allowed to do it. So we're gonna have a ton of fun. No, but no, seriously, like ATV, side by sides, fishing and kayaking, and all the man stuff, along with all the Jesus stuff, along with all the life changing impartation of God at man camp. Like it's the best. I know it's called like a men's retreat or something, but last year we're like man camp, and so I think that's just gonna stay.
And let me tell you, it is like, to me, I was actually talking
Hunting.
I was talking with Pastor Mark about that. And I was like, dude, keep calling it man camp, because so many men's retreats, it's like you're just sitting in a room listening to some other guy talk about how he's done stuff in life and how Jesus has been involved. And I'm not trying to knock him, but I'm saying man camp is a different experience to me. It is literally us pushing each other in the Lord. Like I heard so many people, we had such amazing illustrations last year, because both you and Ryan Johnson had God told you both about rocks at the beginning, at the first day, at the first like session. And it ended up being this illustration, but guys were pushing each other about this whole rock illustration the entire week.
It was amazing.
It was incredible. And guys were coming up with revelations based off of these rocks that we hadn't been teaching. So we just kept track of all these different revelations that guys were getting over the week, and then had people share. And it was just incredible. But on top of that, you're out with other guys doing guy stuff. And it really makes you go, man, you know what? We don't always get the chance as civilized men to get out and do this kind of stuff together. And it really just makes you feel alive. And my wife would tell you, he came back home and was more productive in the next 2 months or so than he was all year. Like,
that's true. No, that's 100% true. So yeah, come to man camp, ffc.church, visit us there. I don't know what the link is off the head, but I'll send out the link. Look for it on our Facebook pages and anywhere else. And you'll find that link. Absolutely. But let's get back to the wineskin.
Yeah.
Yes. At man camp, we're going to have the arts and crafts day, and
yes, we're going to make wineskins.
We're going to make wineskins and explosives, arts and crafts.
Are we going to kill the goats first?
Wineskins. Well, we're going to use the explosives to get the skins. No, but we do hunting and stuff on there, so we could catch our own skins. That might be actually pretty fun. Maybe if this podcast takes off, everyone will be like, all right, we're going to do a real illustration. Okay, but remember the part is like after soaking this in the water. So there's a need for you first to be scraped. So many people miss the scraping process. And then next is the soaking process. There is a need to be soaking. And some of us men, maybe some of us are unwilling to be scraped, but on the reverse side of that, some of us actually are willing to go through the scraping process. Let our flesh die. Let our flesh be stripped away. Let our fat be stripped away. Let the greed of our lives be stripped away. In fact, I would challenge that most men have already done the greed part, especially men with families. What happens is you look at your baby when it's first born, the mother looks differently at it. We look at that baby and all of a sudden we're like, living for us has just ended. And now everything's about providing and protecting, right? When we get married and we have a kid, it's like our whole life shifts into none of this is about us. It's about them and providing and protecting. I think we go too far in that many times, but that's okay. It's about providing and protecting. And so we are actually good about removing us out of the equation, the fat of that many times. And we go into that mode. But what we're not great at is we get out of the way and we're like, hey, we're making all these sacrifices. We're working really hard. I remember the day my dad came home one day, he decided he likes his nails to look good for business. And so he was living with me at the time. And he came back to the house, and he had gone to the nail salon to have his nails taken care of. And he's like, I like a manicure. And I'm like, I don't know about that. And he's like, it says man, a cure. It's for us. So I was like, well, that's fair. I was like, these ladies. So yeah, well, you can't argue that, right? So he comes back and he's yelling at me, Justin. He's yelling at me, get in the car, come with me right now. And I'm like, what? And he says, get in the car and come with me right now. And I'm like, why? He goes, we work like dogs and they live like queens. And I'm like, what? We work like dogs and they live like queens. Get in the car. And I'm like, why? He goes, I'm taking you down here. And I'm like, what? Just get in the car. We work like dogs and they live like queens. You have to understand. You have to know. Like, oh my gosh. He is flipping out. And I haven't seen him this like pushy ever. So I'm like, my dad's a little bit pushy, but like this is different level. So I'm like, fine, I'll get in the car. So I get in the car. We go down. He takes me down to the nail salon and he's like, give him a pedicure. And I'm like, what? Dad, this is not for us. He's like, we work like dogs. They live like queens. You'll understand. And so they put me in the chair and I get in the water and they soak my feet. And then the lady comes over. My feet are being soaked. And then the lady comes over and she's got hot towels and she's got massage oils. And she starts massaging my calf, softening up my calf, right? Stretching and giving me a calf massage. And my feet are in the jets. And I'm in the chair, and you're in the chair. And I'm like, we work like dogs. They live like queens. I'm like, I didn't understand what the fascination over your toenails looking pretty was. It has nothing to do with pretty toenails. That's the scam, so we don't find out. We don't care about, they figured out that we don't care at all about pretty toenails at all. So they're like, that seems dumb. So we stay away so they always can get in to get, if men ever found out what pedicures really were, we would take over.
So if get out of here. What we're doing at Man Camp.
Pedicures. We're having pedicures. Right. So I was like, oh my gosh, I've been scammed my whole life. We work like dogs. They live like queens. And but that really goes to the heart of a man. We'll get up and work on our feet and not that women don't take me wrong, but we'll get up and work on our feet all day and never take care of our feet. Right. Like we don't think that direction. We're just thinking about. So a lot of men are good at being scraped. I really was hoping that pedicure story had a biblical analogy so I could tell it. So I'm happy. So a lot of men are good at being scraped, but what we're not great at is the soaking process.
Yeah, it's true.
We don't soak very well. And so it's necessary to say, yeah, I'm scraped, but I also have to be soaked, because if I'm not soaked, the scraping will keep me from putting mixture into what the Lord does through me. It'll keep me from adding me, right? I die to myself and I live for him. I let go of my own wants and desires so that his desires can pour out of me. But if I'm not good at soaking, every time I try to pour out for him, I'm going to crack or burst because I'm not stretchable. So I'm purified, but I don't stretch. And so I get stuck in my ways. I get stuck in my plan. I get stuck in the old way of doing it. I get stuck in one way because there's no ability to stretch because I have not become pliable, right? Because of soaking. So soaking, your time of abiding in the Lord, that soaking will cause you to stretch. And when you're stretching, you can actually hold more.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, and then you said, then you rub it with salt, right?
Yeah, then you soak it with salt. So it's like I soaked in the sweet, right? That the sweet water, the normal water, there's a soaking, but there's a time, man, where you have to hang out with Jesus when it hurts a little.
Oh, yeah. Well, and what I was even thinking is when it says, we are the salt of the earth, right? When Jesus said, you are the salt of the earth. And the thing is it's easy to look like Jesus when you're by yourself, so when you're doing soaking and it's just you, but when you add other people into your equation, it gets a lot harder to, I tell everybody, it's easy to look mature when you're by yourself. You add other people into the mix, and let's add in some people who rub you the wrong way, and see how mature you look.
Ooh.
Ooh. And that's the thing is when you look at Lazarus, one of my favorite analogies, it actually happened, but it's a great picture, is Jesus raises Lazarus, but after he calls Lazarus out of the tomb, what does he do? He tells the community to take the grave clothes off him. And what do grave clothes do? They keep you bound, they keep you blind, and they keep you looking dead, and
not just that, but Lazarus's grave clothes, the way they wrap you in the clothes. See, a lot of people don't know that they had to unbind him out of those grave clothes, because the way it's wrapped around there, he would have had just minutes before he suffocated.
Oh, wow. No, I didn't know that.
Lazarus would have suffocated to death had he stayed in the grave clothes. There are so many people that have come back to life, that Jesus has come into and given new life, but they won't change their garments. They won't change what they're wrapped up in. And so because they stay wrapped up in things, they end up suffocating back into death. And we wonder why some people come to life or come to Christ or come to church or like start moving in something, and all of a sudden it seems like the Spirit of God that was in them, their momentum to serve God, has been choked out of them. It's because they refuse to change the garments.
Come on.
They have come alive, but they won't change. And so there's no outward shift. They're still wearing grave clothes. They've come to life, but they stink. They come to life, but they have their old habits, their old ways. They won't become a new man. They won't take off the old garments, and it chokes them to death.
Yeah, I always tell people, I'm like, I love that. Like, I need to start adding that in, because that's huge. Because I always tell people, they keep you bound. You're still bound up. And so any button I push on you that's of the old stuff, you're still going to react the same way. You're still bound up. You're blind. So like your eyes are covered. So you still don't see all the goodness God has put around you and all the opportunities God is putting around you, because you're still blind. And then you still look dead. You may be saved, but everyone else looks at you and go, why are you still as grumpy as you were before you got saved 20 years ago?
That's right. It still stinks to be around you.
Yes. Yeah, right. Because it's like Jesus didn't take the grave clothes off him. He told the community to take the grave clothes off him, and it still takes the community to take the grave clothes off you.
Oh, but some of you all by yourself trying to walk out your life, and you wonder why you are still bound, why you still can't see everything, and why you still stink, because you won't put yourself around people that will help unwrap the what was formerly you, to get off that old stink off your life. You need other people there to do it. Jesus will bring you back to life, but he expects other people to unwrap you. That's so good.
Yeah, man. And that's why, like, when you add that you need to be soaked in salt water, it's like, man, you're soaking just with the Lord, but now you have to soak with the Lord and other people. It's like at first there is this thing of like, I only want to be around the main people that I can trust, because I still got some wounds. I still got some hurts in me where, whatever. And so I spend more time around the people I can trust. And then I spend time with the Lord alone. I read my Bible, all that kind of stuff. But I have to start getting around other people that are a little salty to me. You know what I mean? And it's like, that guy bothers me. It's like, good. That's a great place for you to have patience.
Right. You need a little salt. You got the living water, but you need a little salt rubbed in there if you're going to properly cure that wineskin. Yeah. And so a lot of people will resist anything that feels a little salty, right? Because it stinks. Man, that's one of the things about salt is salt stinks.
Yeah, it does.
But, and here's the thing is there's some people that have a revelation of that, right? They try to be, they have no revelation of it first. And we have this idea of love. We just love everyone. We just love everyone. Okay. But they have a false understanding of what love is. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not boast. It is not self-seeking. And it's like, yeah. It also does not tolerate evil.
Come on.
It says it's kind, but it also says it doesn't tolerate evil.
Mm-hmm.
And so if your version of the love of God tolerates evil, that's not the love of God. It can kindly, it can compassionately resist evil, but it cannot tolerate evil. And so please don't mistake that love tolerates evil. That is not scriptural. And so we don't understand that we're supposed to be a little salty. Then there's the other side of the pendulum where somebody's like, that's right. Somebody right now is saying, that's right. Come on, pastor, preach it. We got to smack all these people around and tell them what's up. And here's the other side of it. You're like, let's more salt, more salt, more salt. And they don't realize that what happens is when you oversalt water, it turns into a Dead Sea.
Yeah.
Salt water provides all of the fish of the sea for us. It's teeming with life. But if you add too much salt to that water, it becomes a Dead Sea. It'll float you, but it'll leave everything dead inside. There is nothing living inside of the Dead Sea because it's oversalted. And so it's important to have the right balance of salt water in order for it to bring life and to purify. And so that wineskin is treated with that salt. It helps preserve it. It helps stretch it, but it doesn't kill what's in it.
Yeah.
And so there's a difference between being a little salty and just pouring salt on someone's wounds, right? And we can't just be the fresh water. We can't just be the sweet water where we allow people to believe that out of a false understanding of the word love, that we never bring any correction or say that anything is harmful to them. It's not love to let someone walk off a cliff. It's not love to let someone fall in a fire. Right. It's not love to allow them to do things or to say nothing when they're doing things that are damaging to them. Right. That's not love. Love does not tolerate evil.
It's interesting. For some reason, when you said, gosh, I can't remember what part it was that you were saying, but it hit me real strongly that salt purifies.
Yes.
It's interesting to me. Like, it works. Like, we always, when we say you are the salt of the earth, and all this stuff, right? And I watch so many pastors say, you put it on meat, to preserve meat or to make things taste better. And that works. But the only place where it actually records Jesus saying what it's used for, the salt he was talking about?
Go ahead.
Luke. In Luke, he actually records it's neither good for the soil nor for the manure pile. And so they would use salt to fertilize their fields, and they'd also use it to sterilize their outhouse behind their houses. And so they would dump that on there to purify. But anyways, so salt purifies. And I think we are so into that person is driving me nuts and whatever. And we don't realize God is using that saltiness to purify us.
Come on. That's so good. And if anybody was asking about that scripture that I was just saying that love doesn't tolerate evil, as I paraphrase, I just, sometimes I forget to just make the right quote. We always want to be people of the word. Paul taught this. He said, love does not enjoy or delight. Your translation may say delight. Love does not delight in evil,
but rejoices with the truth. Yeah.
Yes. But true love finds joy in truth and righteousness. And so we don't rejoice and we don't delight in evil at all. And so there's not a tolerance to evil.
That's so good.
Yeah. So we want to see purity come. We want to see righteousness come. We want to be the salt of the world. And that salting helps to preserve, protect. It helps to stretch that wineskin and get it ready to be molded back together. Only once that whole process is done and it's been properly treated, properly cared for, properly stretched, does it start to get sewn into a shape that can carry the wine that's meant to be in it. And then once it's shaped and molded. So some of you are trying to get God to shape and mold you, but you've never abided in him. You've never soaked in his presence. You've never gone through the stripping away process. And so you're like, shape me, mold me, Lord. And he's like, I can't. You're a hard rock right now. You are not moldable clay because you've never been moisturized correctly. I can't shape you. It's like
so
you have to surrender your mold to him and allow him to take you through the process that gets you moldable. It may take you some time to be a moldable vessel, and that's okay. Let him get you there. You know, the script, I think it's John chapter 8. I think it's 8 that says that we are to abide in him. Jesus is talking in a group, and there's some Pharisees there, some leaders, and he says we're called to abide in the truth. That's what he says. You're called to abide in the word, in the truth. I don't have it pulled up. Maybe you can find John chapter 8, because we are two dudes. We should have a Bible.
I was going to say, I know John 15 talks about that too.
I'm almost sure it's John 8. It's either John 8 or John 10, but I'm almost sure it's John 8. We are to abide in the truth. And then it says, and you should know the truth, and the truth will set you free. The scripture before it says that we are to abide in it, and then it says, and then you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So, and it's really important to understand that the first part of that, you'll find it and then read it to me. It's really important to understand the first part of that is we are called to abide first before we know. There is an abiding before there is a knowing. Let me know when you found it. There's an abiding before there is a knowing, or you can just look it up.
I have a bad translation for it, but it says, you are truly my disciples if you remain faithful to my teachings, or abide in my word.
Abide in my teaching. Abide in my word. Yeah,
and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. It's 8, 30, 31, and 32.
See, I knew. All right, so 31 and 32. Yes. So it says, you will be my disciples if you abide in my word, right? If you soak in my word, if you listen to what I've said, if you're immersed in what I said. Like, I want you to get that. I'm a disciple. Really? Because are you soaking in his word? Are you immersed all up in what he says? Like, is it saturating your life? It doesn't even say there that you do his word. It just says you'll be a disciple if you're abiding. And so the first rule is this soaking that you need to go through to abide in his presence, to abide in his word, to understand what he says. And the second part is so powerful, 32 there, where it says, and you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. A lot of times we focus on the second part. The truth will set you free. No, the truth will not set you free. I don't know how, I'm going to burst some bubbles for a second, but just simply having truth doesn't set you free. Just simply because there is truth doesn't set you free. It says, and you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. First, you abided in him. You are a disciple. And because you allowed the soaking process, now you come to a place of knowing. Now, that word knowing is gnosko. Okay, it's the word gnosko. And I teach this when I talk about the 7 sons of Sceva and the way the demon answered him. Jesus we know, and Paul we've heard of. Okay, and Paul we know about. 2 different knowing words. And Jesus we know, gnosko. This one is, and you will know the truth, gnosko. It's the same know that's used for Mary knowing a man. Okay, it's the same type of know as an Adam knew his wife and conceived a son. It's a deep, intimate, personal knowing. That's right. What it is. And you shall know the truth. You'll have, when you abide in my word, when you're soaked in my word, then you will have a deep, personal knowledge of my truth. And that will set you free. You cannot just say, because I went to church and I heard the pastor preach some truth. The pastor said it, therefore I can do it. Can I just tell you, Christianity is chock full of people preaching other people's sermons.
100%.
People preaching other people's revelations. They heard it said, well, look, I had to stop listening to Stephen Furtick the first year after I started the church. I would listen to Stephen Furtick to try to, because he's like a wordsmith, right? He'd say things so well, and I wanted to be better at it's not that I like Stephen Furt. I don't have an opinion. I'm not talking about theology or anything like that. It's just when he would say a sentence, he said it so articulate, and so I would listen to like get better. I listen to lots of preachers, but him in particular, I was listening so I could get more articulate. I could learn how to say things better, be more inspirational in how I said it. And so I'm like, okay, Stephen Furtick just has this way of taking a sentence and just making it just, oh man, that's so good, right? The way he delivers that sentence. So I'd listen to it. But what I found is he said it so well that I couldn't say it different. Everything else was like, you're listening to this amazing way to say it, and then I'm going to say it differently. And I'm going to like, well, it's not as good as what Stephen Furtick said, the way he phrased it. And so I found myself like mirroring him, copying what he said, because I like the way he said it so much. And I'm like, I have to stop listening to him because I am just mirroring that. But what I find, and that's okay if you want to quote somebody who said it well. But what happens in Christianity so much is people will preach other people's revelation. They'll teach you how to overcome sin, but they haven't overcome sin. Here's the truth. Maybe you've heard somebody preach on how to overcome sin, or maybe you've even told someone how to overcome sin, but it hasn't worked for you.
That's right.
It hasn't worked for you. Oh gosh, man, this is going to set somebody free today. This is going to jack you up. It hasn't worked for you. It's not because what you said was wrong. What you said was right. You had the key. The difference is you haven't soaked in it.
Come on.
You've heard it. You've preached it, but you haven't abided in it to the point that it became a personal knowledge. And so you have an understanding. You have I've heard of, but you don't have an abiding. Yes. And so because there is just an understanding versus a knowing, you have a knowledge versus a knowing. Let me put it that way. Knowledge is there's information. Knowing brings transformation.
One time I heard Jesse Duplantis say this, and I was like, man, I was like, I'm so glad to hear someone else say it. And he's like, there are certain revelations that when God gives them to me, I will run with it and say this, I need to give this right now. He's like, but there's a lot of revelations that I don't give until at least a year or two later, because I need to really experience this on a deep level first. I need to see the fruit of it come into my life first. Even Paul says that. He says, I haven't preached anything to you. I'm trying to think of what he says, but it's basically like, I've only preached to you what I've experienced, like what I actually know. And that's the thing, is I want to know that this is something deep in me. And I think it's when I teach on the spiritual on spiritual disciplines, I actually teach on secrecy, the importance of secrecy and being able to hold secrets, right? Not gossiping and not thinking like we're such a culture that I know something and I think I'm important and valuable if I can say stuff. And so I get a secret and I have to be able to hold that secret and not tell people, right? Because that person is counting on me to hold that secret, right? But same thing, I go, it's just like Mary saying about Mary that she treasured all these things in her heart. Or she
says she pondered them in her heart.
Yeah.
Literally what it says.
And it's like, I'm going to let this dig deep in me. I don't just want to get caught up in the fascination. Here's what I'd even tell you about the gifts. I don't want to get caught up in the fascination of giving heavy revies. Come on. I don't want to get caught up in the fascination of, oh, wow, we just saw this amazing miracle. It was amazing. Like, yes, I want those things to happen. But like, I want God to hit me with deep things like, hey, do you just want the show, or are you concerned about ministering to people? If it happens in a very normal way, like, and I don't mean normal, it's one of the things that I like about the early seasons of The Chosen, like when he would heal someone, that it's like, oh, the spots just kind of faded away. Or like, hey, this guy like just wiggles his toes first. It's not like he pops up off the ground and is like, oh, look at me, it doesn't seem like this fantastic thing. It seems kind of normal. It doesn't seem like a show, right? And I go, that's honestly what happens a lot of time with healings. Like, you've even said it before to me. I love when people get the range of motion back, because they can't fake that, right? They can't fake getting the range of motion back. If they have pain, it could be a moment of it's intense. Like it could be like a moment of they're caught up in the moment or whatever, and their pain leaves.
Adrenaline. Yeah.
Right. But that can't happen for range of motion, right?
No.
So the thing is like, I don't want to just be caught up in the moment and have all these people go, oh, all my pain's gone, and that's all we're concerned with or whatever. It's like, no, God, like, I want to know on a deep level that things are really happening. I really want to know that things are happening. It's not emotion. It's not because I could hype things up. We did that at OSI. Like, how many times did we just go silent?
Dead silent.
And just let the Holy Spirit carry it in worship. It was so good. It was so good.
Minute, 2 minutes of just no one making a sound in a room. It was so amazing. And it's like, we're so afraid of silence. We're so afraid to just abide in him and be still and know that he's God. And there's something about that, just soaking, the stillness, the resting period of being in him, right? Resting in him, not just resting. That will grow us to an extent, right? Resting in the revelation, soaking in what you know. So when you get a revelation, let me just say it this way. If you hear a good word at church, or someone puts together, and you know what, Justin, you and I are guilty of this. Like, we're getting on this podcast, and here's a great example. And I have two examples I'm going to give that go with this. You and I will get on this podcast, and sometimes we'll feed off of each other. You'll come up with a revelation that'll cause me to catch another revelation. And we'll get off this broadcast and go, man, that was fire, fresh manna from heaven, fresh revelation came out. I'm going to have to go back and listen. And a week later, you and I were like, what was the key takeaways from that were so powerful? And we've already forgotten it. The seed has already been eaten. It's already been stolen, because it wasn't something we soaked in before we brought it. It was something that was poured out instantly, but there was no soaking, and we didn't go back and soak in it. And it's like, we heard it, we went on to the next thing, and there was no soaking. And so it's forgotten, and it comes out of our ammunition. And maybe a year or two later, you go listen, you go, dang, man, that's really applicable to my life. Why didn't I apply that? Because because it was as quick as I released it, it left. There was no continually thinking on it, continually talking about it, continually dwelling on it till it gets in me. It soaks into me and stretches me and makes me stretchable, right? And so, like I said, I'm going to preach our podcast 2 weeks ago. It was phenomenal. I have to go back and listen because it was such new, fresh revelation. We didn't have time for it to stretch me. It didn't soak in and make me malleable yet. So here's a perfect example. I am finishing, one of the things I'm doing today is I'm actually working on my book, trying to finish up my latest book. And I've been about 80% done for a little while. But I started writing this book in 2018. Mm-hmm. In 2018, God gave me a revelation while I was at Randy Clark's for 3 weeks. And I said, God, give it to someone else. I'm not important. Like, nobody knows me. And this is a heavy revy, and you should give it to someone that has years and years of experience, and has a name behind them that this would be justified for. And the Lord's like, nope, I give it to you. And so I determined, I wrote another book in between this. Why have I not finished this book in 6 years? Because I realized right away that the revelation I was giving sounded good. It would make for a good read. But I hadn't walked it out and proven it at all. I had no life experience for this to be true and real. And I recognized in order for it to be true, I needed to soak in that revelation for a couple of years. I needed to walk it out. I needed to prove it out. I needed to demonstrate it over and over and over and over. And now I have thousands of stories to say what I'm saying is correct.
Yeah.
I had good, fancy theology that was articulate and I could say it well in this book, but I did not have the life experience of actually walking in it, the abiding in it, and knowing it in a deep personal experience. Now I do. So now my book can set people free.
Yeah. And I just want to say, man, that's incredible that you did that, because in our culture, I don't care if you're talking about ministry or business or what, we have a culture that goes, I got to put out another book. I got to put out another, I've got to get another thing out. I got to get another thing out. I've got to be
Got to stay in front of the people. Yeah.
And it's just like, man, you don't even know, most people don't even know what they're writing books on. It's
I literally talked to Destiny Image Publishing a couple of years ago about this book. It's been several 2020. My first conversation with Destiny Image, 2020, and they said, submit it to us so we can look at it. It's been 4 years. I have not given it to them. I've actually talked to the president of Destiny Image about it. And they're like, yeah, we want to look at publishing it next year, maybe. I still haven't sent it to them. Because I'm like, I have not walked this out. There's stuff still missing. And I will not publish this without the information being known.
Man, and a lesson even from the why that's so great is you look at have you seen the knee over toes guy on YouTube? So he's a guy who had, when he was 12 years old, had a 19-inch vertical. Figured, I'm just going to go into the NBA, man. So he goes through every plyo program and all this kind of stuff. And by the time he's in college, he still only has a 19-inch vertical and has had 3 knee surgeries and has constant knee pain. So then he goes and starts doing his own research, and he starts realizing that there are things that go against what we're being told for training, but that says, hey, this is why your knees are not feeling good and your ankles and stuff. This guy has helped NBA players, NFL players, all this kind of stuff. This is 10 years later. He started releasing his material, and he puts so much out there, but he has helped all these guys keep from blowing their ACLs, increase their verticals. So now he's in his 30s. So get this, playing basketball in college, he had a 19-inch vertical. Now in his 30s, he has a 42-inch vertical.
That's nuts.
So who increases by twice as much into their 30s as what they did in college? You know what I mean? And so my point is this, is that holding on to those revelations and going, I'm going to seek this out, is how experts are made. And we've lost that today. We've lost that in a lot of our culture. And especially in ministry, we have a lot of people that want to talk about casting out demons, that if I was in their congregation, I said, tell me your latest testimony. They'd be like, I don't have any testimonies of kicking out demons. Then why are you teaching on it? Right?
Now, if nobody's casting out demons, like B. William Seymour, right? Start talking about it because there's no one doing it and we know we should. But if there are people doing it excellent, seek them out, seek that information out, learn what they learn, but then abide in it. Actually start doing it, start knowing it before you start saying, this is how you do it. How do you know? You've never done it. That's ridiculous. Okay, right, because that goes back to the last point about wineskin. Ancient wineskin, one of the last things they would do is, after they did all the stuff we've talked about already, in order to really seal it and prevent leaks, especially around the edges, they had this interesting thing where they would make slight incisions, about an 1/8 inch deep or so, and they would stuff these incisions with fresh fruit like apples and pears, and they would stuff fruit in these little tiny incisions, right? This seems weird, right? And then they would
never heard this.
Yeah, this is great. So they fold the edges of the wineskin over the fruit and secure it with rubber bands or strings, and this will help to keep the wineskin sealed and prevent leaks. Okay, and so then they could cover it with a clean towel or cheesecloth, place it in a really dark, cool place, and they allow the wineskin to ferment for 2 to 4 weeks, turning it occasionally to ensure that all sides of the skin are exposed to the fruit. So I'm reading like how to make ancient wineskins.
Yeah.
They're exposed to the fruit. After fermentation is complete, I want you to catch this. They actually allow that fruit to ferment in the wineskin. So fresh fruit. After fermentation is complete, they remove the fruit from the wineskin and discard it. They rinse the wineskin, dry it completely, and now it's ready to go. It's the last thing they do to ensure that it's leak proof, to seal it up, is they take that wineskin that's been scraped, salted, soaked, stretched, sewn, and they cut it a little. And then they give it fruit. And they allow that fruit to sit in it. They allow that fruit to live there. So if you're trying to say, God, use me, pour out through me, do you have any fruit in your life? Do you have any fruit? Do you have any skin in the game? And is there fruit on your life?
Wow.
Do you have skin in the game? And is there fruit on your life? Have you allowed the Lord to stretch you and let fruit be packed in you, like his fruit coming out of you? And then he can use you to pour wine out of. That's the process. And so my advice is soak, man. Just like know this. Don't just go, that's a good teaching. Yeah. Well, everything we said today, unless you go through the process, you don't get new wine. What you want is you want to go to a conference and you want someone like me or some great man of God or something and to lay hands on you, blast you, and then you get to carry everything they've carried. And it's like, well, yeah, I can give away stuff. That's 100% true. But there has to be a desire in the Christian community to go through the process and not take shortcuts and say, well, I'll just have someone else who went through the process give me their skin.
Right.
What you do is when the only thing you're willing to do is take someone else's wineskin, you're taking something pre-aged. And you're likely to try to use it, and it might burst on you because you have not been stretched yourself and prepared to carry it. So all you're doing is carrying someone else's wineskin that may come to us. You may try to pour out of it, and it end up bursting.
Well, and that's what brought me to, like, it was like, okay, so what does it take to make a wineskin? But it's like, but what's the whole purpose of making the new wineskin in the first place? Right? It's because that new wine comes in, and what still needs to be able to happen when that wine is poured in there? It needs to still be flexible enough to actually take the fermentation process happening inside of it, right? The gas is being released. Am I right on that? I caught you in mid-cough.
Caught me mid-cough.
But it still has to be able to expand. And here's what I'd say too, is I think people often have the issue where they want the new wine in them, but they think, I went through all this other stuff to get the new wine, and then they're frustrated that there's still stretching that needs to take place. And
after they've already received everything.
After they've already received everything. And it's like, yes, in fact, this is the reason why you went through all that stuff, was in order for you to be able to hold the new wine and still be expanded and flexible, in order to be able to not lose that new wine.
So as a lesson then, you always need to stretch. There will never be a time where you don't need to continue to stretch.
That's absolutely. And the thing about it is, we kind of said this the other day, of everything else done to you was done from an outward force. But what happens after you get the new wine is a stretching that happens from what you're containing.
Ooh, that's good.
And I think that's where people have a hard time. I mean, I think it's real easy for us to get into that place where we go, but I'm holding it, but man, I really don't. Just take the lid off me. Like, just take the lid off me, because I don't want to expand. I don't want to expand. Hey, you know what? I don't want to jump into that new thing that God's told me to do, because that's going to be hard. Like, I'm gonna be really, if I jump out of my job to start a business, or if I try to jump into ministry or whatever, it's going to be hard. And you do have the right side. But it's like I think a lot of people get there and they're content with holding the revelation that they have, but they want to, well, man, it's kind of like what you were saying about they want the lid taken off to release the pressure. But then it doesn't actually ferment the way it's supposed to ferment.
It's good. It's good. No pressure off. That's a good word. Come on, give me 5 over that one. Give me 5.
Gotta go that way?
Thank you. That's good. That's good. All right. And with that revelation, I will take my last sip. And you know what that means? It means I don't want to talk anymore.
Fine. Get back to your writing. See if I care. We just spent the whole week together. We're good.
Right. We just spent the whole week. He's like, but I want more time with you. Yeah, we cried. It's true. We cried. So, guys, thanks for joining us on this great revelation. 2 dudes and a Bible. The takeaway is this: spend some time going through your process. Allow God to stretch you so he can pour out of you even more. Don't neglect the stretching process. Don't neglect the process you go through to turn your old wineskin into new wineskin. And if you find yourself a little crusty, a little bursted, just start soaking with him. The reality is that you can renew wineskin. You can renew it by allowing it to soak once again when it becomes dry. So that's our takeaway. And if you didn't know, I love you. God loves you. Shalom. What's your final takeaway, Justin?
Well,